In 1963, while skimboarding along the tide line in Jacksonville Beach, 16-year-old Bruce Clelland borrowed a board from a guy and rode his first wave.
People were in awe of Bruce, and I watched him off the pier when I was a kid, and that's what kind of got me interested in surfing. He was so far advanced than anyone else at that time in surfing that it was mind-boggling.
We were just skimming around up and down the beach between this end and up towards where Ramada Inn used to be. And I seen a guy out surfing, and I went, God, I should like to try that. And I ran into him and borrowed his board for a couple waves and was hooked.
He would soon become the first world-class surfer from North Florida. Some people are born with a gift, a natural talent for something they love. Just weeks after that first ride, Bruce won his first contest in Jax Beach, beginning a career in surfing that would span over 40 years, lasting even to today with his new Bruce Clelland Legend Model longboard by Ricky Carroll.
I took a 1x12 redwood, piece of redwood, and carved like a little surfboard out of it. It was about 36 inches long. We went up to a place called Thrill Hill, which is over in the Arlington area, and it was really a pretty steep incline hill for at the time. You'd probably get going about 30 miles an hour down the hill. It was kind of like Waimea Bay of skating at the time, because we didn't have anywhere else to skate. Didn't have ramps and skate parks like they do now.
His skin was just deep dark brown, and he had golden locks, and all the women swooned when they had a dance or something at the old band shell or even at the old Coliseum.
His hair was slicked back, blonde. He would remind you of some Roman warrior god from the Roman days or something, the way he looked.
In 1964, the endless summer surf movie came to Jax Beach with surf legends Corky Carroll, Phil Edwards, and Mike Henson. That day, they had a contest for the local kids. Gary Proper, already an established hot dog from Cocoa Beach, showed up and dominated. They took notice of young Clelland's natural talent, resulting in an invitation to be on the coveted Surfboards Hawaii team. The following summer of '65, Bruce joined Dick Catree on the East Coast tour, traveling from Florida to New York, where Catree would unleash the unknown Clelland on unsuspecting competitors up and down the coast.
And we all cruised up all the way to New York and surfed different contests up and down the coast, put on surfing exhibitions. We had these neat black corduroy trunks and black corduroy jackets with the Surfboards Hawaii emblem on them, and we just kind of did the very first tour of anybody at the time.
Bruce's success in competition led to an invitation to the World Contest in 1966 in San Diego. The summer of '67 was huge for East Coast surfing. At the Pawleys Island contest in South Carolina, Bruce dominated as usual. Then in Virginia Beach, for the 5th annual East Coast Surfing Championships, many of California's top surfers showed up. The waves were perfect and North Florida was well represented. Clelland, then 19, surfed his way to the finals for the 3rd year in a row against some of the country's biggest names in surfing. For the next several years, Bruce expanded his knowledge of surfing, shaping, and board design by traveling the globe to such places as Puerto Rico, Australia, Europe, Africa, and Hawaii. Bringing this international influence back to North Florida helped advance the local level of surfing more than anyone could realize.
And he actually brought a new style back to the beach. To me, his style was reminiscent of some of the Australians at the time. They were a smoother style at the time, and I think that's what Bruce brought back here. And it was a different way of surfing, and he was so stylish that everybody wanted to surf like Bruce. He surfed really well. I remember he was going surfing with my brothers one time, and I was going to go, but I hadn't mowed the lawn yet. And so I couldn't go because I hadn't mowed the lawn, and I was going, man, but it's Bruce Clelland, you gotta let me go. But I hadn't mowed the lawn yet, so I couldn't go.
Throughout the 70s and 80s, Bruce remained at the forefront of surfboard design, managing various surf shops here in North Florida and Central Florida. In 2000, Bruce was inducted into the Surfing Hall of Fame by the godfather of East Coast surfing, Dick Cattree.
The king of Jacksonville Beach. The man we all remember as controlling that northern end of Florida with a style, with a grace, with power in his surfing abilities. We used to pick up Bruce Clelland, start our trips up north, and couldn't keep the trophies out of the back of the truck because Bruce kept winning them and bringing them in. One hell of a gentleman and a great surfer, Bruce Clelland. Come on.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is really a meaningful event for all of us. I think we all started out as kids playing in the ocean, and we kind of still are kids playing in the ocean.
Today, Bruce is 58 years old, has been married to Sherry for 26 years. Their 20-year-old son, Scotty, is currently living in Hawaii and charging big surf.
It's more of a lifestyle, spiritual thing than it is just a sport. And that's the way it's always been for me.
In 1961, at age 11, Larry Minyard moved to Jack's Beach from Hazard, Kentucky. His accent was so heavy, his new friends could hardly understand a word he said.
I would fish on the pier, watch these guys ride waves, and it just was awesome to see them ride these waves. So after the morning session of fishing, I'd go down and bomb one of their boards from them.
I used to see this little blonde-haired kid up on the pier all the time. He was fishing. It looked like he was watching surfing when he was fishing.
But whatever it was he brought with him from that backwoods hunting and fishing lifestyle made him one of North Florida's most impressive and influential surfers of all time. Honing his skills at the Jacks Beach Pier, Larry developed under the tutelage of Bruce Clelland and other older surfers.
He picked up surfing really, really fast, and he was one of these really smooth, graceful surfers. And not only that, but he was radical. I mean, he did a lot of cool moves and stuff too. So,
in the mid-'60s, surfers who spent most of their time at the Jacks Beach Pier were able to witness a young Minyard dominate the lineup with long nose rides, whipping turns, and effortless style.
To me, Larry was the best until Joe Roland came along.
Success in local contests came quickly, which in turn opened the door to travels up and down the state to various competitions, of which he commonly made the finals.
On longboards, when you watched Larry run to the nose and just stand there, hanging 5, hanging 10, hanging heels, doing a spinner on the nose and walking back the length of the board.
In 1966, Larry traveled south to Ormond Beach for the state championships. The waves were good and he dazzled the crowd with his long nose rides, taking first place in the junior men's division. This, of course, caught the attention of local surf shops and sponsors, and soon Larry was on his way to the fast track of surfing, touring the East Coast contest circuit from Florida to Maine.
We would go all the way to Rhode Island and do the circuit all the way back from Rhode Island all the way down. And those were some good trips, man. living in vans and getting houses and, just a good time.
Because he did so well that summer in '66, Larry was invited with Bruce Clelland to travel to San Diego, California to compete in the World Contest. Larry would go on to represent the United States in the next 3 World Contests, becoming the only surfer in history to represent their country in 4 World Amateur Surfing Championships. In the late '60s, when boards became much smaller, Challenger Surfboards hired Larry to help them design boards which would work well here on the East Coast. In 1970, Larry toured the coast promoting Challenger and ended up in Australia with Joe and Roso for the World Contest there.
Minyard was very low. I remember him very lanky, very thin, and lean, but very low. And again, it seems like it was very much, not far off what we're doing today, what a lot of the guys are doing today.
In 1971, experimentation in board design was out of control. Boards became tiny, wide and thick, with 2 fins instead of 1. Larry made the transition easily and even excelled. Becoming frustrated with California shapers and tired of waiting over a month for a new board, Larry learned to shape for himself. Now he could put into effect all the ideas he wanted to try in the water. He even teamed up briefly in 1972 with his 2 pals Joe Roland and Dick Rosebro, making Roland, Minyard, and Rosebro surfboards, the most progressive boards made in North Florida at the time.
Roso, they had the Roland, Minyard, Rosebro label, but Minyard shaped actually some of the very best boards here up until probably 74, 75.
Larry continued to shape and compete with much success until the late 70s when he returned to a life of fishing. Today at 55, Larry is nationally renowned as one of North Florida's most adept fishing guides. He is also regarded as a top competitor on the Redfish Tour, married to his wife Holly, and surfs occasionally with their 15-year-old son.
Minyard was probably the first guy I ever met out of this group of guys, and I was scared to death of him at first because everyone told me he was the enforcer at the pier, and he was the loudmouthy, and I couldn't figure it out because he was the skinny little guy, and he wasn't intimidating except with his mouth, and but you know, it was like whatever he said went.
Joe Roland, one of 4 brothers who all ripped, grew up in Atlantic Beach, about 3 houses from the ocean and a block to the Atlantic Beach Pier. His style has been characterized as cat-like, with tales of riding the tip from the outside all the way to the sand.
He looked like David Nueva, man. He could ride. There was nose rides Joe would have that were just mind-boggling.
Charlie Snyder, my old buddy from 5th Street, he had a surfboard. He let us borrow it one day. And it was the first day Joe and I ever surfed, and it was a blast, man. We caught little white waters and thought we were something, man. But that's what started it for both of us.
Water was probably about 55 degrees, so we didn't stay out too long. We didn't have wetsuits. And as soon as we, it happened simultaneously to both of us. As soon as we caught one whitewater, I think we didn't catch more than 1 or 2. We were just totally hooked on surfing. And so immediately after that, we devised a plan on how we were going to get our first surfboard. We decided we were going to go through the neighborhood washing cars for $1 a car, and we went through almost all of Atlantic Beach, knocking on doors to see if we could wash people's cars or do some lawn work for them or something like that.
During the 60s, Joe's prowess on a longboard was admired by all, fellow surfers and sponsors alike. Many considered him to be the hottest kid in town. Joe Roland was a real surf star. The magazines loved to showcase him, catapulting North Florida into the limelight.
When Joe kind of went on his own and started winning contests, it opened the door for everybody, because now all of a sudden the world knew where Jacksonville was. They looked and they said, wow, the next hot guy is going to come from Jacksonville.
1968, the first year the boards had dropped from over 9 feet to under 8 feet, Joe was crowned the Eastern Surfing Association's first men's champion. From there, he was invited to compete in 1968 World Contest in Puerto Rico and the 1970 World Contest in Australia. This earned him his own signature model from Hansen Surfboards, followed in 1970 with Roland surfboards made by Rick out of California. Joe shaped his own boards with Larry and Rosso in 1972, and like Larry, continued to shape and compete into the mid-70s before taking off on world travels. Today at 55, Joe works for the city of Jacksonville as a computer programmer and still surfs better than ever, making the occasional appearance at the Epic Surf Ministry Surf Contest. His incredible music talents can be witnessed on Sundays at Beach's Chapel, and he's as much a legend today as he was back then.
He again was another legend we all looked up to. You know, those guys were just like, if we could only surf like that, that's how we always thought.
Dickie performed really well in larger waves and all, and in competition he did real well.
Dick Rosebro is probably the most influential surfer to emerge from North Florida.
He makes my boards. The guy rips insanely at 55 or whatever he is. He'll always surf great. He's such a pure surfer. I mean, he has such a pure style. Can be applied to anywhere. So, you know, there's nobody like Rosso.
It's ironic, too, because in the 60s, he didn't gain the notoriety from the general surfing population like Joe and Larry because he didn't surf the pier in Jack's Beach. He usually stayed in AB, surfing the breaks near Hanna Park and the base.
Back in the days when Clelland was the man, and he was the man, and he ruled for years in those early, mid-60s. But back then, you know, Atlantic Beach was its own world. The Neptune Beach and Jack's Beach were their own little worlds, and you'd only see those guys at school because nobody had cars and we were too young, you know, to drive or anything like that. And I remember even when living in Atlantic Beach, when we never even knew where access, you know, I remember when Joe Roland and I, we went to Access 1 and Access 2 and Access 3. And then I remember him coming to me and telling me that, wow, there's an Access 4 and an Access 5, you know what I mean? And we never even went that far.
But like Larry and Joe, Rosso is smooth yet aggressive and a good tip rider.
He did a lot of really good maneuvers. He had great nose riding abilities and turning, and he was very fast. I mean, he's like run up to the nose like super fast, hang 10, run back, and you know, he was all over the place. But he was, you know, high energy. He's a high energy surfer, and smooth too.
His success in competition earned him a slot on the big surf teams of the era, like Hansen and Weber. He did the East Coast tour, traveling up north with his buddies, always doing well, no matter what town or what state. These guys were dominating, putting Jacks on the map and paving the way for future generations of North Florida surfers to make their mark as well.
Everybody would sit and watch the guy. He was so good. People wouldn't even take off on waves. They'd just watch him ride and rip a wave apart. He was doing radical turns off the top of the lip of a wave on longboards before guys were doing it on shortboards.
Roseau continued to do well throughout the 60s, earning himself the chance to join Joseph and Larry in Australia for the 1970 World Contest, as well as a cover shot on Surfing magazine. Upon returning home from Australia, Roseau gave up competition and took up shaping, learning from Ted James from Fox Surfboards. In January of '73, he decided the logical next step was to move to Hawaii. He became a fixture on the North Shore for the next 10 years, earning the respect of the heaviest locals as both a surfer and a shaper. His spots were Rocky Point and Sunset Beach, where he stood out as one of the best.
Sunset Beach is a big wave, it's a challenging wave, and that was my style of wave. It's a, over, under, around, and through type of wave, and it's a large takeoff area, and you could go out there, and it's a magical place, and it's still the most magical place I've ever surfed and probably ever will surf.
In 1984, Roseau moved back home and set up shop, where he's been making some of the finest surfboards available ever since, both short and long. At 55, he still surfs like a kid, with a board for any size surf, whether it's 1 foot or double overhead.
To me, surfing in Florida is like when the surf's good, I drop everything and go surfing. I've got a well-rounded life. I'm an avid gardener. I'm a fisherman. I have a beautiful wife, and I love to spend every sunset with her, talking about the day and what lies for the future. It's a great way to live, and slows life down when you demand that, to watch the sunset every day, just like Hawaii, man, buddy.
Legend to me is someone who has left their mark, and the marks they've made withstand the test of time.
They break new ground consistently in their chosen sport, and that to me would create a legend.
Almost like somebody that's bigger than life. It's almost like they're some kind of super person. They're not even who they are, really.